Hi, I'm Harry Yonkers, the HSFA Archivist, and it's lovely to welcome you all to find out more about our compelling archive and the work that we do. So the HSFA Archive has two main branches. We have the organisational records of the HSFA from 1996 to the present day, so that shows a history of all the activities that we do, and we also have personal papers such as these. So we have 80 sets of personal papers, mostly relating to Holocaust survivors and refugees who made their homes in the north of England, and some are of associates. So for example, we have a collection of correspondence from the 1930s between a Berlin bank clerk and a local Huddersfield journalist. So whilst neither of them were Holocaust survivors or refugees, they're very illuminating into how German perceptions of the Nazis changed over the years. So the collection spans from the 1880s to the present day, and we have physical, original material, as well as digital records. The collection is relatively small, it's a modest size, but it's regionally and nationally very significant. It's also very special because it's a living archive, and by that I mean not only are we proactively expanding our collections, but the collections are also heavily used by staff, students, researchers, educators and creative practitioners, which is very exciting for me as an archivist because it means that the material doesn't just live in the box, we're actively using it all of the time. The archive is also special because the collections are very survivor focused, like the wider HSFA, and we have strong relationships of trust with the survivors and their children and wider communities, which means that the collections have really strong provenance, so we know a lot about them. And even more wonderful from an archivist point of view is that if we don't know something about an item, very often we can go back to the families to find out more. So for example, last month we made a fantastic discovery of a small collection of glass plate negatives, and we quickly digitised them in-house on a light box, and we were able to go back to the donor family who gave them to us, who live in Leeds, and show them the pictures and ask them if they recognised any of the people in them. And they got in contact with their cousins in Switzerland, and from there we were able to put names and places to the images. The collection has grown gradually from 1996 onwards, and the personal papers such as photographs and objects, correspondence and documents, these grew in parallel with 4 projects that we did in the 2000s and 2010s, which were to capture testimony of Holocaust survivors who made their lives in the north of England. And it was only since we opened the centre in 2018 and more recently that we've very proactively been collecting archive material for its own purpose. So in terms of what we collect, as mentioned, we have physical material and we have digital scans and photograph of material. We have testimonies with survivors and second and third generation, so audio and visual interviews. We also have artefacts such as you've seen in the museum, so toys and household objects. We also have a collection of textiles and clothes and artwork. And as well as the original material, we also have secondary material, by which I mean records created by the survivors or co-created with the survivors and ourselves about their experiences. So for instance, books or zines or graphic novels and animations. Some of the research strengths of the archive include the pre-war Jewish life of European families, kinder transport and child refugee experiences of persecution, so in the ghettos, the camps and slave labour, and then post-war or also during the Holocaust, making a new life in the north of England, and finally intergenerational testimonies and experience, which is a more recent and expanding area of our work. So here we have some of the photographs and postcards and ephemera that illustrate pre-war Jewish life. For example, we have this Viennese lady's 1922 railway pass, and we have postcards from Cairo and Genoa. And then this wonderful photograph is from the Cubi collection, and they were an Austrian family who lived in Czechoslovakia, and they've given us over 500 photographs which span from the late 19th century onwards. And in terms of teaching, this is a really magical collection because it covers everything from holidays and hobbies and days out, celebrations, and then obviously their pets. so our young pupils and students find these particularly interesting to look at because it really demonstrates that the people who were persecuted in the Holocaust lived normal and everyday lives like you and I. We also have lots of records pre-war relating to families who were trying to leave or who did leave occupied Europe. So for example, this is a receipt kept by Susie Schaefer, who came to England. It's from 1939 and it shows that she paid 20,000 Reichsmarks to leave Austria as part of the so-called Jew tax. And we also have lots of correspondence relating to families who were writing to relatives abroad or trying to secure exit visas and working visas. And we also have lots of correspondence that complements this receipt that relates to claims for compensations. So in this case, Susie kept this receipt and used it as evidence post-war to gain compensation from the government. We also have lots of wartime records, such as travel documents and ID documents like passports, and lots of correspondence. So for example, we have letters sent via the Red Cross. This one was sent from Amsterdam to Jenny Wolf in England, and it's from the family saying that we're longing for good news since Trude's letter September. Are so far well, state health and nerves unchanged. Bella had good reports, heartiest birthday wishes, love. We also have telegrams, and this one is from Henry Mendel, who sends it from Manchester to his relatives in Switzerland. And he says, "Dear Alice, Rachel, Willie, are you okay? I am. Heaps of love. Kisses, yours, Henry Mendel." And we also have lots of Henry's correspondence from the war because he was a German refugee who came here in the 30s, but was then interned on the Isle of Man. And we have a wonderful collection of his letters between him and his family, and they're obviously all frustrated and expressing their desire that he can rejoin them. And some of the gems of our collection are these postcards here. So we have 180 postcards that were sent by the Friedman family who were in Theresian Camp Ghetto. And the postcards are from Hugo, Hilda, who are husband and wife, and their 2 children, to their family friend Irma, who lived in Vienna, and she managed to survive the war, and she kept all of these postcards. And these are really, some of our most magnificent collections, and they have a lot of untapped research potential. So at the moment, we are looking for translators who can help us translate them from German into English, so we can really unlock their potential. And as you've seen in the exhibition, we also have lots of wonderful artefacts that really bring the history to life. So this toy belonged to one of the child refugees who came to the UK in the 1930s, and it's a little garage that he owned during the war. And finally, we also have this item, which belonged to John Csillag, who was a Hungarian refugee, and he settled in Leeds after the war, and he was really instrumental in setting up the HSFA and its educational activities. So as an archivist, my job is to manage and develop the collections. It's a very exciting time for the HSFA archive because I'm the first professional archivist, and I started in October 2021. So we are currently preserving, cataloguing and digitising the collections, which will safeguard them and open up access for engagement. So in terms of preservation, a team of archive volunteers and I are repackaging physical collections like these to make sure they're all in archive standard boxes and folders and enclosures. We're also digitally preserving the digital records, such as testimonies, to ensure access for the future. And I am cataloguing the collections, so we'll soon have an online catalogue, which will really open up the archive to national and international researchers. And finally, we will soon be starting a large-scale systematic digitisation project to make sure all these unique items are scanned and photographed, and again, to unlock their potential for engagement. As you can imagine, this work is very detailed and time-consuming, so if you can donate or support us in any way, it really makes a difference to how many family papers we can preserve and catalogue and digitise. We are actively seeking volunteers who can help with the preservation and also to transcribe testimonies and translate documents, because as you imagine, we have many European languages in our documents, and these are tasks that can be done remotely. We're also actively seeking new donations of original material. So if you have any documents, for instance postcards or correspondence or photographs, no matter how big or small, we'd love to hear from you. Even just one, say, receipt or ephemera, like a greetings card or a postcard, can make a real difference. It can illuminate an aspect of the refugee or survivor experience that we didn't know and tell an unknown story. So please do get in contact with us if you have any Holocaust connections to North of England, or if you'd like to find out more, or for example, if you'd like to find a suitable permanent home for some original archive material, or if you would allow us to borrow some of your family papers and then we can digitise them and share the scans and photographs with you, or if you'd like to be interviewed to talk about your or your family's experience. That would be wonderful. Thank you.